Okay, are you ready for this then? Let's go through. What we'll also talk, obviously, is hopefully you've thought about using your calculator for something. So, this question, by the way, a lot of the first ones are foundation level questions. So just in case you didn't know how to do it, I've shown in colours what I've done. So there's the equation. You insert the x in and work out what y needed to be. Okay. Alright. So those are for 2 marks for all 3. If you got 1 wrong, you can have 1 of the 2 marks.
How does the marks allocate then?
Just told you 2 marks for all 3, right? If you've got 1 wrong, you can have 1 mark.
2 wrong, you only got 1 mark.
No, 2 wrong means no marks. Because you got more wrong than you got right, so you might have got lucky with 1. If you got 2 right and 1 wrong, it's more likely that you knew what you were doing and made the mistake with the negative, for instance. So they give 2 marks for all 3, 1 mark for 2. Okay? Now, the next stage then, so part B is just to plot those points. So I've done it there, blue, red, green. Plotted those points.
Yes.
And draw that blue line through it.
I don't know what I was doing.
Now the other lines come later on.
Question.
Yeah?
That's the 2 marks is allocated just for the pointed in line, right?
Okay, so on the grid, draw the graph, right?
Yeah.
-1 to 4. So 2 marks.
But just in line.
1 would be for plotting the points correctly, and 1 would be for actually drawing the line.
Okay.
Okay. Now I would say that it says here from -1 to 4, so technically your line should not have gone past those points, but having done this before, I think it didn't actually pick that up from the mark scheme.
I have a question. So, was we supposed to plot all the points between ones?
That it doesn't matter if you have. There's no penalisation for adding more points or anything like that. As long as the 3 points. Well, to be honest, even if you've not plotted the 3 points, but the line is correct, you get both marks. The 1 mark is for not drawing the line but plotting those points. Maybe you didn't know what to do about joining them or not. So that would be that. Okay. Then I've shown here with the lines. Oh, sorry. It's me. What I was doing before. I've shown with the coloured lines which one's which. Okay. So x being greater than 1. All right. Well, actually, -1. So here's the pink line. X has to be greater than -1. So I've coloured in the less than side because I've not allowed it. Y being greater than 2. So I've put a line through y as 2. Remember, it stops you in the y direction. So that's at 2. So I've gone. It's got to be greater than that. So I've shaded underneath. And then that's the one I did before, so it's got to be less than 4, so I'm only allowed underneath, so my R is in that region. Okay? And the marks are, okay, there's only 2 marks, so 2 for getting the region, alright, you get 1 mark if you at least drew all the lines correctly, so the other 2 lines correctly.
I did that.
The blue region is all the way up there, right?
Yeah, so basically I'm saying that you are not allowed to use anything above that line. So I've shaded everything above that line.
Oh, so this line is what the blue line is supposed to be, the one that we
Yeah, the one that you did for part A. Okay. And then the green, I'm not allowed to use anything below it. So the region is...
So where it says shade the region, so
Okay,
shade
so
R?
basically what it says here, show by shading on the grid. It doesn't say shade the region. Now, if what you did was shade what you're allowed, although I've never said that, I've always shaded what we don't use, it's fine to shade the bit you're allowed, but then you will have only shaded where R is. Yeah? Which is fine. As long as if your R is in the right place, bounded by the right lines, you get both marks, regardless of what your shading is. That's why they've not said by shading the region or by shading what you're not. They don't specify that. You can do it either way. Okay? I think you've done it.
Shading
Just show
on the
me
grid,
yours.
the region
You've not
which
done
satisfies all the
Y has to
So
go
shade,
through 2.
basically shade the region.
Yeah, you
And
get
the blue needs to go higher.
I'm just saying. Just take it. Just take it.
Technically, it does say to shade the region.
It's
No, it doesn't. It says show
fine.
by shading on the grid.
The region.
The region. So I've shown by shading what I'm not allowed. What's left is the region. I've shown by shading the region.
You're right.
Okay. But what I would say, I don't know about this, label the region R. Now, if you just shaded and didn't put the R, if it's not very clear, then you might lose a mark. I'm not going to, but it's very in this test, but it says very clearly, label the region R. If you don't do that, you're risking losing a mark. Okay? Alright, moving on. Again on the grid. I haven't completed this one, so we'll finish this off. Those two lines on the grid, x equals 2, so remember a line that would stop me in the x direction at 2. So that's the x equals 2 line, and the green one is the y equals 3 line. So that's the first part. Part 3 I didn't do yet. I thought we'd do it together just to explain. Alright. So this one, so how would we do y equals 3x plus 2? What are the options? We've got several. Anyone? Anyone know how they use their calculator to do it?
Wait, for that?
Yeah?
You
For the
just-
next one, 3x plus 2.
3x plus 2.
And then, so put it into your calculator and then do your table and find your points. In the same way, I could just do, well, like I did before, y equals 3 lots of minus 2 plus 3. Sorry, plus 2. Using the wrong thing. Plus 2. So 3 lots of minus 2. And that's 3 times minus 2 is minus 6 plus 2. Well, that's minus 4. So I know I've got minus 2 minus 4. So I've got a point there. Okay. Now I could do that and keep going. Anyone know? Well, I could get all the coordinates from my calculator. That's the other thing. Anyone know the quick way? Remember the quick way of using gradient and intercept? Like?
The rise and the run.
Yeah.
And the rise is 3 and the run's 2.
No.
Of like the squares.
No, not quite.
Is that 3 over 1?
3 over 1, yeah. Looking at the 3 is rise over run. So rise over run has to be equal to 3, which makes it 3 over 1 or 6 over 2 or whatever. Okay? The plus 2 is the y-intercept. So we could do it by starting at 2, going across 1, not 1 square, 1 on the grid, across 1, and then up 2, so 2 to 4. So it would have to be...
2.
Well, I got up 3. Where I got that?
Sorry, up 2, not up 2, you're right. It should be up 3, because it's the grid. So across 1, up 3. Yeah? Across 1, up 3, because the grid's rising. Alright? So that would be your line, and we should, by doing that, remember it says minus 2 to 3, so technically I should stop, but I don't think you're penalised. That first point we plotted is there. So that would be that line. So however you choose to do it, that's how we do it.
So how much marks would you get for that?
Let me have a look. So 5 marks. There would be 1 mark for each of the first 2. Okay. There would be basically then for the final line there'll be a mark for having it cross at the +2. If this line's wrong, if you've got all 3 right, 5 marks. If the final red line is wrong, you'll be given 1 mark for does it cross at 2, and 1 mark for does it go up, does it have a positive gradient,
Okay,
even
so,
if the gradient's wrong.
so let's say you got your blue line and your green line wrong, but you got your
Okay, so
points
that's
and your
it.
red line right. You get
If the
2
red
marks.
line is right, I would give it 3.
Okay.
And it just got the other
You
2
don't
right.
have the blue.
If the other 2 are right, there's 2.
God.
Okay.
Oh, I know I did this. I just said
line was
3.
wrong.
But for instance, if the line does this, for instance,
But it goes.
I would give 1 mark because it is a positive gradient. All right. If the line does that, it's still 1 mark. It goes through +2. It's a positive gradient, but still 1 mark. If the line does that, nothing. If the line does that, 1 mark because it does go through +2. Okay? So lots of options to get marks even if you get it wrong. Alright? Lots of marks available for that question. And then it says, mark with a cross a point on the grid that satisfies both the inequalities, x being greater than 2 and y being greater than 3x plus 2. So I don't need to shade at all, but if I were to say x has to be greater than 2, so that means I can't have anything this side of that line, so all of that's gone. Okay, so I can't use that grid at all. Now you don't have to shade, I'm just doing it to show you. And then I've got to have y must be greater than 3x plus 2, therefore I've got to use above this red line. So all of this is now out of action. So
So it's nothing.
the only area that I can use is up here. So like a point there.
Could you have
Maybe
said?
choose that one right there.
Yeah.
So there's a point here, there's a point here, there's a point here.
So what if you got the first one?
Can you not?
Any of those.
Because it's worth 2.
That's not how I got.
And then one's got to be labelled point P.
Excuse me, I have a question. Why can't you use the top one?
Yeah, but I can't use the red one.
Because it's got to be greater than, not equal to. So the lines are equal to. Yeah, that's why I've not allowed it on the blue line or on the red line. So I would probably suggest there that out of those 2 marks, if you put a point in this region on the line, you can have one of the 2 marks.
Fabulous.
If your point is not on the line and in that region, you can have 2 marks. Anywhere else, nothing. Okay? Don't forget, label the point P. You should have put a P there. I'm not going to penalise you this time. Okay, so now we're on to a bit of the algebra stuff again. So I was kind of hoping that you'll be fine with this. Expanding. X squared plus 2x, 1 mark. Minus 2t plus 4. So we're collecting the like terms. Or 4 minus 2t, whichever
So you
one.
aren't supposed to put it in brackets?
Pardon? No,
That's
no.
factorized.
Yeah.
Shut up, Sophia.
But saying that, if you have got 2 and 2 minus t, then that's not wrong.
No, I didn't get that. I got 2 in the outside bracket minus t plus 4. Oh no.
How did you do that?
Because you took the t out here but didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see why you did
Yeah.
that.
A common mistake actually. Solving the inequality. So I've said Remember, treat it like an equation. So add the 7 to both sides, divide by 4, gets me x has to be greater than 2.5. I've said do a check. Again, you could have done this mentally, it's not a problem. First number, easiest number greater than 2.5 is 3. I've ended up with 5 on using this. 5 is greater than 3, that's correct, so I'm on 5.
Could you leave it as a fraction?
Can you give us like 5?
You can leave it as a fraction. As long, yeah. Is your fraction 5 over 2 or 10
10
over?
over 4.
I got 5 over 2. Is that correct?
5 over 2 is fine. Yeah.
Just 10 over 4.
I would say 10 over 4. If you're going to leave it as a fraction, it should be
Give a
simplest. So 5 over 2. So I would only give you 1 mark for 10 over 4, being harsh, but I think. So with this one, there is 1 mark for getting 2.5 or equivalent. 5 over 2, 10 over. Okay, 1 mark for getting that number right. And then there's another mark for doing the x is greater than that number. So if you wrote down x equals 2.5, or you only get 1 mark. So you get the second mark for saying x has to be greater than 2.5. So if you did it the wrong way round and said x is less than 2.5, you get 1 mark. Alright? Factorising, I've written it out just to show you. Again, you don't have to. Y is the common factor. Taken the y out, I'm left with 3 y's plus 2 in the brackets. 1 mark. Expanding, FOIL. Okay. So x times x gives me the x squared, minus 9 times x, minus 9x.
Why can't you got an X?
2 times x gives me the plus 2x, and then minus 9 times plus 2 is minus 18. And then you get 1 mark if you got the uncollected, unsimplified option, but then both marks if you collect it together correctly. Okay. I'm afraid if you got any of those bits wrong, leading to an incorrect answer there, you get no marks. Solve the inequality again, treat like a fraction. Minus 5 gives me 6k 15, therefore k is 15 over 6.
No marks for allocated.
I said that too.
Yeah, there are.
There's 1 mark for
There's
that.
3 marks.
Oh, so that's 3 and this
So this would be 2 marks. No, hang on,
that would
sorry.
be 3.
It's 3 marks for that, isn't it? Yeah, because it says 6 at the bottom.
But
Oh no, sorry, it's not, because they're worth 3. This is worth 2. So again, no, it's not. This both parts are worth 3.
That's all
3
one
each?
question. and
All
it's
one question is worth 6 marks. This is 1 question, question 4. So you've got 3 already
Part C
given.
is 3 marks in total.
So C, part 1 and 2 is 3 marks in total. So for part 1, 2 marks. Same thing as before. 1 mark for the 2.5 again, or equivalent. Okay. 5 over 2, 15 over 6, whatever. And then 1 mark if you did the k must be less than. Alright. And then 1 mark because we need to notice that this is the same as this, just with an n instead of a k. And we're saying k, or n, has to be less than 2.5. An integer is a whole number. So basically the largest whole number less than 2.5 is 2.
Oh, I put 2.
So for 1 mark.
So that
How much is all
this bottom was just 1 mark.
That's 1 mark.
Okay. So that's
But I got it, like,
Okay, so just to confirm, that one is worth 2 marks. That's worth 2 marks. This one is worth 1 mark, which makes the 3 for that bit in total.
That's a total. I got 2.
Okay, question 5. Expanding each bit in turn. So 18A minus 12B plus 6C.
All the easy questions are like.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Factorizing.
Oh, that question?
T times T.
Oh, you were supposed to do plus.
I don't mind it.
I'm not talking about that.
Okay. I don't know where the other,
Oh,
why you would only get 1 mark for that, but yeah.
I have a question on
C, okay, we'll get there. Are we right for part A and B?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, for that one, it's 2. I would say, potentially, there's 1 mark if you factorise but got one of the factors correct. So if you put a T on the outside, but you've still got T minus 10T on the inside, you could probably have 1 mark. Quite generous because it's probably a foundation question. Okay? So 1 mark if you got T or T minus 10 right. Okay, part C. We've got x equals 7 minus 2x over 3. Okay? Now, because of the way it's written, it can look a bit confusing. But,
I didn't know that
got
axis
x
with
e-
that equation. Like it
but then there's got to be an equals for an equation. When you solve, there has to be an equal.
Like, I just thought you were supposed to solve.
Oh my god, me too! Samia, I'm
That's
just
why I
catching
was
up to
like-
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was
So,
confused. I was like,
can't
how are we
do
supposed to
that.
like equal like I was like, I thought equal to nothing.
I thought it was equal to like 0. And then, like,
So I've got x equals,
That's-
first step I do, times by 3 to get rid of the divide by 3. Gives me 3x equals 7 minus 2x. I'm then going to add 2x to both sides, so I get 5x is 7. Divide 3 by 5, so I've got x is 7 over 5, which is fine for 3 marks. Or 1 2/5, or 1.4, whatever is
You
worth
get
3
working
marks.
out marks?
So I would give you 1 mark if you
times
did
3?
correctly the times by 3 to get that line.
Oh, I did.
Okay, I got 1
I got
mark.
1 more. Goes
Okay.
yeah.
I'd give you 1 mark if you did divide by 5 but got this wrong.
I divided by 5, I got that wrong.
So basically you've got,
I
no sorry,
just did it wrong.
if you get 1 mark for times 3, 1 mark for adding the 2x, it's those stages. Sorry. So that would be timesing by 3 gets you 1 mark, plusing 2x gets you 1 mark.
Why if you just plus 2?
That's wrong. It's always like, if it's a correct step in the working, so for instance, if you did that right, and then did that bit wrong, you only get the 1 mark. If you did that bit wrong, you can't pick up any of the other marks, because everything you do is then out. Okay? Okay. I thought you might struggle with this one, but look, have to put it in, give you a bit of experience of it. So the perimeter is adding up all the sides, and because it's a rectangle, we know these sides are the same and those sides are the same. So I've added all those up for the perimeter, 4x plus 4 for A, and B is 12x, and we are told that the perimeter of A is equal to the perimeter of B, so A equals B, so 4x plus 4 is equal to 12x. Okay. The thing with a question like this, the maths is not hard, but it's that interpreting what they're saying. We need to get you used to reading and seeing and taking the information out of it. Alright?
I understand what the answer is now.
Okay. Find the value of x.
You, Leo. I spent so much time on that, and then I got this part wrong. Oh, I got that.
You got like 10 minutes on that.
I told you you missed it.
Yeah, I got that.
After this page,
Now, the marking for this, if you came up with a correct perimeter of A, 1 mark. If you came up with a correct perimeter of B, 1 mark. If you then made them equal to each other, 1 mark. If you got either of them wrong, but still made them equal to each other, you can have that mark. Alright? So there's 1 mark there, 1 mark there, 1 mark for doing the equals. Okay? So even if both of those are wrong, but you did one side equals the other, you can have 1 mark out of those 3. Okay?
Oh, I did that kind of.
Because it's about understanding that you make one of them equal to the other. That's part of it. And then there is only 1 mark for the solution. Therefore, if you didn't get part A, you only lose 1 mark for part B, for part 2. Okay? Any questions on that? No? Okay. Come on. Don't freeze. Okay, back to...
Oh, seriously, I put it the other way around.
It was so much work now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like understanding that you've been given the graph. It's about reading the whole question.
So stupid.
Because if you looked at, if you just read that question and went, oh, simultaneous equation, I've got that. So I've been given that one equation. I've been given that equation. Yeah, you can do simultaneous equations to solve that. But you need to look and go, oh, hang on, I've been given a graph. Why have I been given a graph? It's, you know, therefore this solution, where they cross is the solution to. So you either take 5 minutes or you take 2 or 3 seconds, yeah. Right.
10 minutes.
I'm an idiot. How did I write it down wrong?
Okay. Now, to go through this then, showed the working.
Look what I did.
Now we've done this before, so find an equation of line which is parallel, which means the same gradient, to the equation 2x plus 3y equals 12. So what is the gradient of that? That's the first thing I've got to find. So I've rearranged it to be in the form y equals mx plus c.
Yes.
Yeah? So that would be the c, and this would be the mx. Alright? So m, the gradient, is minus 2 over 3. Do you see how I got there? So I've rearranged it of minus 2x, gives me 12 minus 2x. And then I've divided by 3, which gives me that, which I then split. So 12 over 3, I could change and write 4 minus 2 over 3x. But I don't care what 12 over 3 is. I only need the gradient bit, so I just didn't bother. Okay? So once I know it's the gradient, I then stick that next to the x in mx plus c. I then look at the point I've been given, and the important factor is that the x-coordinate is 0, which means that's the y-axis intercept. So it crosses at 10. So I just have to put the 10 there. So it becomes, bless you, minus 2 over 3x plus 10. We've done a few of those, so hopefully you're starting to get more familiar with that process.
How do the marks work for this one?
Okay, so I would say you would get 1 mark for putting the plus 10 at the end. Alright, so if you've got the minus 2 over 3 bit right, you can have 3 marks. If you didn't get either of those, but what you did was attempt to rearrange into the form y equals something, I would give you 1 mark for attempting to rearrange, even if you got it wrong. Okay? I would then give you a 2nd mark if you rearranged correctly, but took the gradient to be 4, for instance. So you took the gradient wrong. So there'd be 1 mark if you tried to rearrange. To be honest, if it's obvious from what you did, you tried to put it to y equals mx plus c. 1 mark if you did that correctly, but you just didn't take the right gradient. And then the final mark if you did do the gradient and put it in the right place. Alright? And then 1 mark for having the plus 10. The reason why that's only worth 1 mark is because all you have to do is read it. There's no work to be done to it. All right with that?
Mhm.
Okay. On the grid, mark with a cross. Same kind of thing as before. So 2x plus 3y is less than 12, and y has to be greater than x minus 1. So,
I didn't even see this question.
if y has to be greater than, well, that's this one here. So I'm not allowed anything below. Okay? And then we were saying that it has to be 2x plus it has to be less than 12. Therefore, I've got to go below that line. Therefore, I can take a region any point in there. So I'm just going to check any other information, and it says each point which satisfies both these inequalities and whose coordinates are positive integers.
So 1, 1.
So therefore, that also means that I can't go this side. So the only ones that I can have there, 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 or there.
Oh boy.
You have all of them?
No.
Either one of them.
Well, let's just read the question again. It says, mark with a cross each point which satisfies both these inequalities.
Oh, so my.
So 1 mark if you've got one mark. If you put 1 cross, you only get 1 mark. If you identified more than 1 mark, more than one of those, you still get 1 mark. If you did all 4, you get both marks.
Yum, yum.
If you did all of them plus others that don't fit,
You got 0
no marks. Okay? Because that would suggest you don't really understand the region. Okay? So for instance, anything on the lines, okay? Are we allowed anything on the lines?
Yes.
No, because we've got no equal to. So if you put anything on the line, lose your marks, I'm afraid.
What happens
Go on there.
if you have coordinate 4, 1?
4, 1. That's over here.
Yeah.
That's not
It's
allowed.
wrong.
I have a question.
Oh boy.
Wait.
8 plus.
Yeah. Why wouldn't that be non-acceptable?
What does that mean?
Why would it not be acceptable?
Because that doesn't meet this one. It has to meet both inequalities.
Not just one or the other. Oh.
So if 4, 1, for instance, 4, 1, if I put that into, remember the inequality was y has to be greater than x minus 1.
Yeah.
Okay? So 4, 1, alright?
Oh, the y's 1.
The y is 1.
I see.
So 1 has to be greater than 3, and it's not. So therefore, that point is not allowed. That's why I shaded all that region orange.
Orange.
Okay? So we're only allowed these points. We're not allowed anything on the lines because we weren't allowed it. There is a question though about, are we allowed these ones?
I say yes.
No.
Because that
No,
was-
because the orange is colored plus.
You're looking to me. Where are you looking?
No, because the y is.
It's like seriously.
No, y would be 1, 2, 3, that's fine. It said positive integers.
0 is well. It is fine.
Go on, you're making the point I'm getting at, which is
0 is like it's yeah. It's neutral.
0 is not a positive integer, is it?
It's
Okay.
not.
It's not.
So what is it? It's not negative or it's not positive?
It's not.
So 0 is not considered the positive integer. The first positive integer is 1. Okay, that's why it's only those 4 points and not anything on the
So what's
axis
the
there.
first negative integer?
Minus 1.
So why is 0 there? I'm so.
What do you mean y is 0?
How do you?
Because we need it. Because the graph shows all numbers, not just integers. But
It says mark with X and I shade the region.
Maybe you should follow instructions.
yeah, well, that's a good point actually. Would you consider that a silly mistake or a see, I wouldn't. I would consider that a lack of exam technique that needs to be practiced. Okay. If you would say, by the way, it's to everyone. If you're too quick to say it's a silly mistake, it suggests it's not something you need to work at. Sorry, Milo, do you need something while we're working? Or?
No, good.
No, you're good. Okay. All right. So, when you've got an inequality with two limits, one below, one above, the idea is that we split it separately and do them both separately. So then we've got -4, so that gives -1, so -4 there. So I've got x must be greater than -1, and over here -4, -4, so I've got x is less than 3. And then because it's x and x, I put 1x and go less than 3, greater than or equal to -1. Okay?
I did that. The other one's on the
So, I would go for that one, 1 mark, 1 mark, 2 marks.
Where you got 7 and 13?
Then this one, again, n is an integer again. Write down all the values. So the values are -1 is the first one I'm allowed.
0.
0, 1,
and 2.
and 2.
What if you didn't put negative right here?
Right, so if you miss out any numbers, one number, you lose a mark. So there's 2 marks for this, isn't there? Okay? So if you miss one number, no, I'll put it from a different perspective. If you put one number only, and that's one of those, you can have 1 mark.
Right.
If you put all 4 numbers, you get 2 marks. So if you've only put 3 of them, you still only get 1 mark, because you're showing the right numbers. Again, if you put any that is not correct, you lose all your marks.
Because you didn't know what it was doing.
Exactly. Okay.
Wait,
So
but then
if I included 3, I lose my marks, because 3 is not included in that list.
Because it don't say equal to.
yes, it does.
Not equal to 3.
It says less than.
Negative 1.
Look, that one's less than, but I'm allowed the -1 because of that sign on that side. Okay? Right. So I got to this point, I thought, right, now's the time we'll start doing them together. So split it again, -2, x plus 2, and then x plus 2, less than or equal to 5.
Oh, where?
Alright. What do I do here? Subtract the 2, so I get -4 with x. Okay, and this one, if sorry, that's a plus, isn't it? -2 again, so I get x and 3. So my x is, okay, for the 2 marks, 1 and 1. Now, when I say 1 and 1, you have to have it with the correct symbols. Now, they can be separate like that, that's absolutely fine. You don't need to write them together, no problem. Okay, so on the number line, for 2 marks, well, you must have for 1 mark an open dot on the -4, whether you do it above or on the line, it's fine. 1 mark for that, and a closed dot on the 3.
Oh, I got a close
Okay.
down 3.
With the line that goes in
Oh,
between.
I got a mark. I just realized.
Now, if you got both dots, but you didn't draw the line, you lose one of your marks. If you've drawn the line but one of the dots is wrong, you lose one of your marks. If you didn't draw the line and you got one of the points wrong, there's nothing.
Wait, what did you say? You got nothing at all?
If you did it all wrong.
If you got 2 parts wrong, you lose 2 marks, which means there's none left. It's basically the way these questions are worked is, right, when there seems to be 3 things to do correctly but only 2 marks, it basically assumes, right, you give you both marks, and then everything you get wrong you lose a mark. So out of 3 things you can only get 2 marks to show understanding. 2 things wrong, done. Because you might have guessed one of the 3 and been lucky, so we don't give you a mark for guessing. Alright? Okay, finish this off then. What do we do here? Take the 8. Good.
Subtract 8 from both sides. Go
Gives
to
me
Yare.
3x is
27. And then we do
Divide by
3.
divide by 3 gives me x is
And it's x is 9. Woohoo.
okay. 1 mark for step 1, 1 mark for having the correct answer. So Life says if you don't get both marks, you get 1 mark if you do that first correct step. Okay. Write down the inequality on the number line. So there is an x, so we should be writing x. There is a solid dot that has to be less than or equal to, and there is an open dot. Should be
Go me.
okay. 1 mark for getting this right with the 4.
Yeah.
1 mark for that right with the -2. If you got, I'm afraid, in this case, if you got the sign wrong, the number is just too easy, so you lose your mark. But you don't get anything for not writing the numbers. Alright? The focus is on the signs, but... Okay? Alright, so that's it.
There's one.
One more? Oh, okay. Okay, good. Now this one, you're going to go, oh,
Why?
because I'm sure you've done, therefore x is less than the square root of 16, which means x is less than
That's
4.
like we already
That's
done.
why I got it.
But it's
Yeah.
X is greater.
My leg.
No.
No, but the thing is, it's, what about,
Okay.
what's the square root of 16?
-4 as well.
No.
Plus and minus 4.
So it's 1
So
mark.
we should,
Get 1.
if you've got the x is less than 4, you get 1 mark. If you put x is between 4 and minus 4, okay, you get both marks. But it had to be between the 2.
I would have watched it.
Oh yeah, 25 out of 55.
Oh, no, Giselle, you made me mess up my counting.